I never thought I'd be standing in a parking lot at 63 years old, watching my own daughter drive away in the only car I had to get to work. But that's exactly where I was last Tuesday morning. Keys gone, dignity shattered, and a police report hanging over my head like a noose. My name is Vernon Mitchell. I'm 63 years old, and back in April of this year, I was living in a small rental house in East Atlanta, trying to keep my head above water after my wife passed. I need you to drop a comment and tell me where you're watching this from, because what I'm about to tell you might sound impossible, but I swear on everything I love, it happened. See, my daughter Simone bought me that 2019 Honda Accord back in April. Champagne color, clean interior, leather seats that still had that new car smell clinging to them. Just enough miles that it was affordable, but not enough that I'd be stuck on the side of the road every other week. She showed up at my house on a Saturday afternoon, with the keys dangling from her finger and tears in her eyes, saying, "Daddy, I know how hard it's been since Mama died. I want you to have this." I cried like a baby, held that girl so tight I thought I'd crack her ribs. My hands were shaking when I took those keys. I thought she was giving me freedom, a way to get to my job at the warehouse without begging rides or waiting 2 hours for the bus in the Georgia heat. But what she was really giving me was a leash. And 6 months later, she yanked it so hard I'm still trying to catch my breath. April to October, 6 months of me paying that $340 note every single month. 6 months of me putting gas in it, keeping it clean, taking it to oil changes at the Jiffy Lube on Memorial Drive, treating it like the gift I thought it was. I washed that car every Sunday morning before church, vacuumed the interior, kept the windows spotless. I treated it better than I treated myself. But none of that mattered, because to Simone, it was never really mine. Then, yesterday, I get a text message.
Not a call, a text. Daddy, I'm coming to get the car.
Be ready in an hour. I stared at that phone like it had cussed me out. My heart started pounding. My hands went cold. I called her immediately, hands shaking so bad I almost dropped the phone. "Baby, what are you talking about? This is my car. You gave it to me." And that's when her voice went cold, colder than I'd ever heard it, like she was talking to a stranger instead of her father. "It's in my name, Daddy. Technically, it's mine." And Terrell's motor just went out. He needs it more than you. Terrell, her man, some dude she'd been dating for 8 months who couldn't even keep a job at a call center. A man who'd never looked me in the eye, never shaken my hand with any kind of strength, never showed me an ounce of respect. I reminded her I'd been paying the note every month, on time, never missed a payment. I reminded her I needed that car to survive, to get to work, to live my life. And you know what she said? None of that matters. Then she hit me with a hammer. "If you don't give me the keys, I'm reporting it stolen." That's when I knew. My daughter, my firstborn, the girl I raised to know right from wrong. The girl I walked to school every day until she was old enough to go by herself, the girl whose diapers I changed and whose tears I wiped, was gone. And in her place was a stranger who'd sacrifice her own father for a man who didn't even respect her enough to fix his own problems. Let me take you back to when things were still good. April 13th, 2024. That's the day Simone pulled up in that Honda Accord. I remember it was a Saturday because I'd been up since 5 in the morning scrubbing the kitchen floor on my hands and knees, trying to make the house feel less empty. The silence in that place was suffocating. Every room echoed. Every corner reminded me of what I'd lost. My wife Lorraine had died 4 months earlier, February 9th, a heart attack in her sleep. 1 minute she was there, breathing softly beside me, and the next she was gone. Just like that. 61 years old. We'd been married for 42 years. High school sweethearts. She was my first everything. First kiss, first love, first dance, first and only wife. You don't just bounce back from losing someone like that. You don't just wake up one day and feel whole again. The grief sits on your chest like a boulder, and some mornings you wonder if you'll even be able to get out of bed. I was working in a warehouse off Moreland Avenue, lifting boxes that weighed more than they should, scanning inventory until my eyes blurred, doing the kind of work that makes your back scream by lunchtime and your knees buckle by quitting time. But it paid the bills. Barely. Rent was $950 a month for a two-bedroom house that hadn't been updated since 1987. The carpets were stained with God knows what from previous tenants. The water heater sounded like it was coughing up a lung every time you turned on the hot water. And the air conditioner only worked when it felt like it, which in Georgia summer meant I spent most nights sweating through my sheets. But it was mine. Or at least, I was paying for it. After Lorraine died, I sold our house in Decatur, the house we'd bought 30 years ago, the house where we raised Simone, the house where every wall held a memory, to pay off her medical bills and the funeral costs. Cancer treatment isn't cheap, even with insurance. And funerals? Don't even get me started. What was left over got me 6 months in that rental and not much else. Simone knew how hard I was struggling. She'd come by every couple of weeks, bring me groceries, cans of soup, bread, peanut butter, things that would last. Sit with me at the kitchen table while I cried about her mama. She'd hold my hand and tell me it was going to be okay, that Mama was in a better place, that I needed to take care of myself. She was a good daughter. At least, that's what I thought. She worked as a medical assistant at a clinic in Buckhead, made decent money for a single woman, lived in a nice apartment near Lenox Square with a doorman and a gym she never used. She wasn't rich, but she was doing better than me. Way better. And when she showed up that Saturday with that car, keys in hand and tears streaming down her face, I thought it was her way of saying, "Daddy, I got you. I see you struggling, and I'm here to help." I thought it was love. Pure, unconditional love. I didn't know it was a trap. She came inside first, didn't mention the car right away. We sat at the kitchen table. The same table where Lorraine and I used to eat breakfast together every morning. Where Simone used to do her homework while I helped her with math problems she couldn't figure out. And she asked me how I was holding up. I lied, told her I was fine, told her work was good, the house was good, I was eating right, sleeping okay. All lies. Every single word. Truth was, I'd lost 15 pounds because I was skipping meals to save money. My pants were falling off my hips. My shirts hung loose on my shoulders. I was catching the bus to work every day. 2 transfers, 2 hours each way, standing in the heat waiting for buses that were always late, always crowded, always smelling like sweat and exhaust. My knees were shot from 30 years of manual labor. My back was worse. 3 herniated discs the doctors said I needed surgery for, but I couldn't afford. And every night I sat in that empty house and talked to Lorraine's picture like she could still hear me. But I didn't want Simone to worry, so I smiled. I nodded. I played the role of the strong father who had everything under control. Then she said, "Daddy, come outside. I got something for you." Her voice was soft, gentle, the way it used to sound when she was a little girl asking for permission to do something she knew would make me happy. I followed her out to the driveway, my heart already starting to race because I didn't know what to expect, and that's when I saw it. That champagne Honda Accord sitting there in my driveway like a miracle from heaven. The sun was hitting it just right, making it gleam. It looked brand new, even though it had 32,000 miles on it. She handed me the keys and I felt the weight of them in my palms, solid and real. And she said, "It's yours, Daddy." I put $5,000 down. The note's in my name because your credit's not good enough after all the medical bills, but I want you to have it. You deserve this. You've been through enough. I broke down right there in the driveway. Didn't even try to hold it in. Tears just came pouring out. I hugged her so tight, buried my face in her shoulder the way I used to when she was small, and I'd pick her up after a nightmare. Told her she didn't have to do that it was too much, that I couldn't accept it. She said, "Yes, you can." Yes, I did. You're my father. You deserve this. Mama would want you to have it. And for the first time since Lorraine died, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I was going to be okay. The first month with that car felt like freedom. I'm talking real, soul, deep freedom. The kind of freedom I hadn't felt since before Lorraine got sick. No more waiting at bus stops in the rain, watching the buses pass by full because they couldn't take any more passengers. No more getting to work late because the bus broke down or the driver decided to skip stops. No more sitting on a hard plastic bench at 6 in the morning with strangers who smelled like cigarettes in desperation, watching the sun come up and wondering if this was all my life was ever going to be. I could get in that car, turn the key, feel the engine rumble to life, and go wherever I needed to go. It wasn't just transportation. It was dignity. It was independence. It was proof that I still mattered, that I was still a man who could take care of himself. I paid that first note on May 15th, $340. I remember the exact amount because I'd been saving for it since the day Simone gave me the car. I didn't want to be late, didn't want to give her any reason to regret what she'd done. I remember going to the bank on my lunch break, standing in line behind a woman with 3 screaming kids, withdrawing the cash from my account and watching my balance drop to almost nothing. That car was worth it. I drove to Simone's apartment complex after work. A nice place in Buckhead with a gate and a security guard who looked at my old work clothes like I didn't belong there. And I took the elevator up to the 3rd floor. She wasn't home, so I wrote her a note on the back of a receipt I found in my pocket. Thank you, baby girl. First payment. I love you more than you'll ever know. Dash Daddy. I slipped the envelope with the cash under her door and stood there for a moment feeling proud of myself. She texted me later that night, just a thumbs up emoji. No words. No thank you. No, I love you too, Daddy. Just a thumbs up. At the time, I didn't think much of it. I told myself she was busy. But looking back now, I realize that was the first sign, the first hint that something had shifted between us. June came, and I paid again. This time, I sent it through Cash App, like she'd suggested. Told me it was easier that way, that I didn't have to drive all the way to Buckhead, so I did. Figured out how to download the app, link my bank account, send the money. It took me an hour 'cause I'm not good with technology, but I did it. Sent her $340 on June 15th at exactly 9 o'clock in the morning before I left for work. She didn't even acknowledge it this time. No thumbs up. No emoji. Nothing. I checked my phone all day, thinking maybe she just hadn't seen it yet. But by the time I got home that night, still nothing. July, same thing. I sent the payment, she didn't respond. August, same thing. By September, I started to feel like I wasn't paying for a car anymore. I was paying rent to my own daughter, like the car wasn't really mine, like I was just borrowing it. But I didn't say anything. I didn't want to seem ungrateful, so I kept my mouth shut, kept making those payments on the 15th of every month like clockwork, and kept pretending everything was fine. It was around this time that Simone started dating Terrell. I didn't meet him right away, but I heard about him. She'd mention him in passing during our brief phone calls, calls that used to last an hour but now barely made it to 10 minutes. Terrell took me to dinner at this new place in Midtown, she'd say. Terrell's thinking about going back to school for computer science. At first, I didn't think much of it. Simone was 39 years old, never been married, no kids. She'd had boyfriends before. I figured she deserved to be happy. But then I started noticing little things that didn't sit right with me. She'd cancel plans with me at the last minute because Terrell needed her for something. We were supposed to have dinner one Sunday. I was going to cook her mama's fried chicken recipe. The one Simone used to beg for when she was a kid. And she called 2 hours before saying she couldn't make it because Terrell was having a bad day. Bew. She'd stop returning my calls as quickly. I'd leave a voicemail asking her to call me back, and instead of calling within an hour like she used to, it would take her 2 days, 3 days, sometimes a week. One Sunday in late September, I finally met him. Simone brought him by the house without warning, said she wanted me to meet the man she'd been seeing. I was in the middle of fixing a leaky faucet in the bathroom when they showed up. I heard the doorbell, wiped my hands on a towel, and opened the door to find Simone standing there with this man I'd never seen before. Terrell walked in wearing a too-tight polo shirt that showed off muscles I'm pretty sure he spent more time building than using for actual work. Jeans sagging just enough to annoy me, and a gold chain that looked like it cost more than 3 months of my rent. He shook my hand. Weak grip, limp and lifeless like shaking hands with a fish. No eye contact. He said, "Nice to meet you, sir," but it didn't sound sincere. It sounded like something he'd been told to say. He sat on my couch like he owned the place, legs spread wide, taking up space. Didn't offer to help when I brought out snacks, crackers and cheese. Nothing fancy, but it was what I had. Didn't ask me a single question about myself. Just sat there scrolling through his phone, occasionally laughing at something on his screen while Simone tried to make conversation. I watched him, studied him, and everything in my gut told me this man was trouble. When they left, I walked Simone to her car. She was smiling, happy, glowing in a way I hadn't seen in years. Creation darkness. It's a... And I didn't want to ruin that, but I had to say something. I said, "Baby, I don't know about that one." She laughed it off, waved a hand like I was being silly. "Daddy, you're just being overprotective. Terrell's a good man. He's just been through some things. Hit a rough patch." I wanted to tell her that a man who's getting his life together doesn't show up to meet his girlfriend's father wearing a gold chain that probably cost more than my car payment, doesn't spend the whole visit on his phone. But I didn't say any of that. I just nodded and said, "Okay, baby. If you're happy, I'm happy." She hugged me, told me she loved me, and drove away. I stood in the driveway watching her taillights disappear, and I felt something heavy settle in my chest. A knowing, a dread. I knew that man was gonna cost me something. I just didn't know it was gonna be my car and my daughter. October 1st. That's when everything started falling apart. I was at work, in the middle of my shift, stacking boxes of dog food onto pallets in the warehouse. The air was thick with dust and the smell of cardboard, and my back was already aching even though I'd only been there 3 hours. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I normally don't check it at work. My supervisor doesn't like it. But something told me to look. It was Simone. A text message, not a call. Daddy, Terrell's car broke down. Can we borrow yours for a few days? I stopped what I was doing. Read it again to make sure I wasn't seeing things. Borrow the car? The car she gave me? The car I'd been paying for every month without fail? I didn't respond right away. I couldn't. My hands were shaking. I finished stacking the boxes, clocked out for my lunch break, and sat in the break room staring at that message for 20 minutes. Finally, I called her. She picked up on the third ring. "Hey, Daddy." Her voice was light, casual, like she hadn't just asked me for the only thing keeping me afloat. I said, "Baby, I can't let Joe borrow the car. I need it for work." I need it to get back and forth, to get groceries, to live my life. There was a pause on the other end. I could hear music in the background, could hear voices. Then she said, "It's just for a few days, Daddy. Terrell's trying to get his motor fixed, but he needs a way to get to work in the meantime. He'll lose his job if he doesn't have transportation." I reminded her I had a job, too. I reminded her I'd been taking care of that car like it was made of gold, paying for it, keeping it running. She sighed, and I could hear the frustration in her breath. "Daddy, I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. Please." And that's when I made my first mistake. I said yes. B-b- I told myself it was just a few days. I told myself I could manage. I'd take the bus, call in a favor with Jerome from work, and catch a ride with him a couple days. Figure it out. Simone came by that night to pick up the car. It was around 7, the sun just starting to set. Terrell was with her, sitting in the passenger seat of her Toyota Camry, window down, arm hanging out, looking smug. He didn't even get out to say thank you. Didn't walk up to the door. Just nodded at me through the window like I was the valet. Simone took the keys from my hand, and I could see she was in a hurry. She kissed me on the cheek, quick, perfunctory, and said, "I'll have it back by Friday, I promise." "Thank you, Daddy." Bigger, you're a lifesaver. Friday. That was 4 days away. I could handle 4 days. I watched her get in my car, watched Terrell slide into the driver's seat, watched him adjust the seat and the mirrors like he owned it, and then they drove away. I stood there on the porch feeling like I'd just made a terrible mistake. Friday came and went. No car. I called Simone Friday afternoon. She didn't answer. I texted her. She responded 3 hours later. "Daddy, the repair is taking longer than expected." Just a few more days. A few more days. Those words echoed in my head all weekend. I had already taken the bus to work twice that week. The first time, I was 15 minutes late because the bus broke down. My supervisor gave me a warning. The second time, I left an hour early to make sure I'd be on time, but the bus was so crowded I had to stand the whole way holding onto a pole while my bad knee screamed. I called Simone on Monday. She didn't answer. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Finally, on Friday, a full week after she'd taken the car, she called me back. Daddy, I'm sorry. Terrell's mechanic said the part they need is on back order. It's going to be another week. Another week. That meant 2 weeks total. I said, Baby, I can't do this much longer. I need my car back. Bo. She said, I know, Daddy. I'm sorry. Just hold on a little longer. By mid-October, I was furious. Not just frustrated. Furious. The kind of anger that sits in your chest like a fire you can't put out. I'd been late to work 3 more times. My supervisor pulled me aside, took me into his little office with the flickering fluorescent light and the smell of stale coffee and said, Vernon, I like you. You're a good worker. But if you're late, one more time, I'm going to have to write you up. And if you get written up again after that, I'll have to let you go. I nodded, told him I understood. But I didn't know how I was going to keep that promise without my car. I called Simone that afternoon, and this time I didn't hold back. I told her I needed my car back immediately. Today, right now. Big. She got defensive, her voice sharp and cold. Said I was being selfish, that Terrell was going through a hard time, and I should be more understanding. I said, what about me? What about what I'm going through? I'm about to lose my job because you took my car. She went quiet for a long moment. Then she said, her voice softer, I'll bring it back this weekend. I promise. She didn't. October 20th. I finally got the car back. But not because Simone brought it. No, she dropped it off while I was at work. Left the keys on the porch under the doormat like I was some stranger she didn't want to face. No note, no apology. When I got home that evening and saw it sitting there, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. But that relief didn't last long. I walked up to the car, unlocked it, and the first thing I noticed was the smell. Fast food, stale fries, something sweet and artificial. I looked in the back seat and saw the evidence, fast food wrappers from McDonald's and Popeyes. An empty soda cup in the cup holder, grease stains on the back seat, and a pair of Terrell's shoes, dirty white sneakers that looked like they'd walked through mud. Big. I stood there staring at those shoes, feeling something twist in my gut. I checked the gas tank. Empty. Completely empty. I checked the mileage. They'd put over 300 miles on it in 2.5 weeks. I cleaned it all out that night, threw away the trash, wiped down the seats, scrubbed the grease stains, filled the tank with gas I could barely afford, and I tried to let it go. But I couldn't, because for the first time I realized my daughter didn't see me as her father anymore. She saw me as someone she could use. November started quiet. Too quiet. Simone didn't call, didn't text, didn't stop by. It was like she'd vanished from my life. And honestly, I was avoiding her too. I didn't want to fight. Didn't want to hear her voice and feel that anger bubbling up in my chest. So I let the silence sit between us like a wall, brick by brick, getting higher every day. I went to work, came home, ate dinner alone in front of the TV, and tried not to think about how much I missed my daughter. Not the Simone who took my car and filled it with trash. The real Simone. The one who used to call me every Sunday just to check in. The one who cried at her mama's funeral and held my hand through the whole service. I didn't know where that girl went, but she wasn't here anymore. Thanksgiving came around, and I got a text from Simone.
Daddy, I'm cooking Thanksgiving dinner at my place.
Want to come over? 3 p.m. I stared at that message for a long time. Part of me wanted to say no. But the other part, the part that was tired of being angry, tired of being alone, said yes. So I went. I stopped at the grocery store on the way, picked up a sweet potato pie because I didn't want to show up empty-handed, and drove to her apartment in Buckhead. When I walked in, Terrell was there too. Course he was. Sitting on her couch like he lived there, feet up on her coffee table, watching football. He glanced up when I came in, gave me a nod, said, "What's up?" and went right back to the game. Didn't stand up. Didn't shake my hand. Didn't offer to help Simone in the kitchen. The whole meal felt stiff, awkward, like we were strangers forced to share a table. Simone had cooked a decent spread. Turkey, dressing, mac and cheese, greens, cranberry sauce, but it didn't taste like home. We sat down to eat, and Simone tried to keep the conversation light. Asked me how work was going. Bea, I said it was fine even though I'd been written up twice more for being late. Asked me if the car was running okay. Dish. I said yes, even though every time I got in it I thought about Terrell's dirty shoes in the back seat. Asked me if I'd thought about dating again. I said no. That was it. That was the extent of our conversation. Terrell didn't say a word to me the whole meal. Just ate like he was at a buffet, piling food on his plate, going back for seconds and thirds. When dessert came around, I cut the sweet potato pie I'd brought and served everyone a slice. Terrell took one bite and said, "This is dry." Just like that. No, thank you. Just criticism. I looked at Simone, waiting for her to say something, to defend me, to tell him to show some respect. But she didn't. She just laughed it off, said, "Terrell likes his pie with more sugar." Like that made it okay. But I didn't say anything, just ate my slice in silence, feeling smaller with every bite. When the meal was over, I helped Simone clean up. Terrell went back to the couch, back to the football game, leaving us to do all the work. I washed dishes while Simone put away leftovers, and for a moment it felt like old times. But then she said, "Thanks for coming, Daddy. I know things have been weird between us." and I wanted to say, weird? You took my car for 2 weeks and didn't even apologize. That's not weird. But I didn't say any of that. I just nodded and said, yeah. It's been weird. When I left that night, I sat in the car in her parking lot for a long time before I started the engine. I looked up at her apartment building, at the warm lights glowing in the windows, and I felt something crack inside me. I realized that my daughter and I had nothing left to say to each other. We were just going through the motions. The love was still there, buried deep, covered in hurt and resentment, but the connection was gone. I drove home that night with tears running down my face, and when I got to my little rental house, I sat in the driveway and called out to Lorraine like she could hear me. "Baby, I don't know what to do," I said to the empty air. "I'm losing her. I'm losing our girl, and I don't know how to save her." December hit, and with it came the cold. I kept paying that car note. $340 on the 15th of every month, like clockwork. I didn't miss a payment. Not once. Even when it meant skipping meals. Even when it meant my electric bill was late. I figured as long as I kept up my end of the deal, everything would be fine. But I was wrong. Because on December 10th, I got a call from Simone that would change everything. It was a Tuesday night. I'd just gotten home from work, my back screaming from lifting boxes all day, and I was heating up a can of soup for dinner when my phone rang. Simone's name flashed on the screen. My heart jumped a little. She hadn't called in weeks. "Bye," answered on the second ring. "Hey, baby girl." She sounded upset, frantic, almost. "Daddy, I need to talk to you about something." Pff, pff. My stomach dropped. I said, "What's wrong?" She said, "Can I come by tonight?" "It's important." I said yes. She showed up around 7. Terrell wasn't with her, thank God. She sat at the kitchen table, wringing her hands, like she used to do when she was a little girl and knew she was in trouble. I made her some tea, and we sat down. Finally, she said, "Daddy, Terrell's car is done. The motor's completely shot. It's going to cost more to fix it than the car is worth."
I didn't say anything.
I just waited. She kept going, her hands wrapped around the mug. "He can't afford to buy another car right now. He's been out of work for 3 weeks and money's tight." And I was thinking, maybe he could use your car. Just for a little while, until he gets back on his feet. I stared at her. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The room felt like it was spinning. I said, "Simone, that's my car. I need it. I need it to get to work, to survive." She looked down at her tea, not meeting my eyes. "I know, Daddy. Bud, it's in my name, and I put the down payment on it. The $5,000. So technically, it's mine. And if Terrell doesn't have a car, he's going to lose his job. And we're talking about moving in together, maybe even getting married, and I can't. Wheel. So, what are you saying? You want to take the car back after I've been paying for it every single month? After you gave it to me and said it was mine? She finally looked up at me, and her eyes were hard. Not the soft eyes of my little girl, but the hard eyes of a stranger. She said, I'm saying Terrell needs it more than you do right now. Those words hit me like a physical blow. I stood up from the table, my chair scraping against the floor. Get out, I said. My voice was shaking. Get out of my house. She started crying harder, saying I didn't understand, saying Terrell was going through a hard time. I said, so that's it? After everything I've done for you? After everything I've sacrificed? You want me to be supportive while you take away the one thing keeping me from falling apart? She stood up, grabbed her purse, and headed for the door. Before she left, she turned around and said, Daddy, I'm sorry, but this is what I have to do. And then she was gone. I sat there in that empty kitchen for hours, didn't turn on the TV, didn't eat dinner, just sat there, staring at the wall, feeling like my whole world was crumbling. I thought about calling her back, begging her to reconsider, but I knew it wouldn't matter. She'd made up her mind. That night, I barely slept. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about what I was going to do, how I was going to get to work, how I was going to survive. And I realized I didn't have answers to any of those questions. The next morning, December 11th, I woke up with a knot in my stomach that wouldn't go away. I didn't want to believe Simone would actually go through with it. I told myself she'd cool down, think about what she was doing, realize how wrong it was. But deep down, I knew better. I went to work like normal that day, clocked in at 7 a.m., put on my work gloves, and started loading trucks. When I got home that evening, around 6 o'clock, I heard a car pull into my driveway. I looked out the window, and my heart sank. It was Simone, and she wasn't alone. Terrell was with her, sitting in the passenger seat of her car, that same smug look on his face. I knew what was coming. I walked outside before she could knock, and we stood there in the driveway facing each other like two strangers. She looked tired, but also determined. She said, Daddy, I need the keys. I said, Simone, please don't do this. I'm begging you. I need this car. Her voice was firm when she responded. The car's in my name. I put the down payment on it. Legally, it's mine. I can do whatever I want with it. I felt my chest tighten, felt my hands start to shake. I said, so that's it? After everything I've done for you? After raising you by myself when your mama was sick? After working 2 jobs to make sure you had everything you needed? Bug. After paying for this car every single month like you asked me to? This is how you repay me? She flinched a little, but she didn't back down. This isn't about you, Daddy. This is about my future. About building a life with Terrell, I said. I understand perfectly. Rebellious guy. I understand that you've chosen a man who doesn't respect you, doesn't respect me, and can't even take care of himself over your own father. Her eyes hardened. She held out her hand. Keys. Mm. Now, I should have said no, should have stood my ground, but I was tired. So tired. Tired of fighting. Tired of being treated like I didn't matter. Psst. So I reached into my pocket, pulled out the keys, and dropped them into her palm. They made a small jingling sound as they fell, and that sound felt like the final nail in the coffin of our relationship. Buh. She didn't say thank you, didn't say sorry. Just turned around, walked to the car, and got in. Terrell slid into the driver's seat of my car, and I watched him adjust the seat, adjust the mirrors, like he was settling in for a long drive. Simone followed him in her car, and I stood there watching them both drive away, watching my car disappear down the street, watching my daughter choose someone else over me. I walked back into the house, and the silence hit me like a wave. I sat on the couch, and then I cried. Not just tears. I'm talking deep, gut-wrenching sobs that came from somewhere so deep inside me I didn't know it existed. I cried harder than I had when Lorraine died. Because at least when Lorraine died, it wasn't her choice to leave me. This was Simone choosing to leave me behind, choosing to hurt me. I cried until I couldn't cry anymore, until my chest hurt and my eyes were swollen and I felt like I had nothing left inside me. And when the tears finally stopped, I felt empty, completely, utterly empty. The next few days were hell. I called in sick to work, told my supervisor I had the flu, even though we both knew it wasn't true. I stayed in the house for 3 days straight. Didn't answer the phone, didn't check my messages, didn't shower. Just sat there in my pajamas, staring at the TV without really seeing it, eating cereal straight from the box. On the third day, my coworker Jerome called. He'd heard I was sick and wanted to check on me. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. And for the first time since this nightmare started, I told someone the whole truth. Bad. I told Jerome about the car, about Simone, about Terrell, about how I'd been paying for it every month and how none of that mattered. I told him everything, and he listened without interrupting. When I finished, there was a long silence. Then Jerome said, "Man, that's beyond messed up. But you gotta get back to work. You can't let this destroy you." patient. I'll pick you up in the mornings if you need it. His kindness almost made me cry again. On December 15th, I dragged myself out of bed and went back to work. Jerome picked me up at 6:30 a.m. in his old pickup truck. He didn't ask questions, just turned on the radio and let me sit in silence. When we got to work, my supervisor saw me walk in and gave me a look, part relief, part concern. I was late. Again. He didn't say anything, but I could see the disappointment in his eyes. When Jerome dropped me off at home that night, he said, "Vernon, you need anything, you call me. You hear?" I nodded and went inside. I sat at the kitchen table and stared at my phone. Part of me wanted to call Simone, wanted to beg her to bring the car back. But I didn't, because I knew it wouldn't change anything. She'd made her choice. That night, I made a decision. Bah. I decided I was going to stop waiting for Simone to fix this. I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I knew I had to try. Christmas came and went, and it was the loneliest Christmas of my life. Simone didn't call, didn't text, nothing. I spent Christmas Day alone, eating a frozen dinner and watching old movies on TV. I tried not to think about how different things used to be. How Lorraine would spend days cooking. How Simone would come over on Christmas Eve and spend the night. Those days were gone. New Year's Eve, I made myself a promise. Standing in my kitchen at 11:59 p.m. with a glass of water, I looked at my reflection in the window and I said out loud, "Vernon, you're going to stop waiting for Simone to fix things. You're going to survive this." Clock struck midnight, and I felt something shift inside me. Not hope exactly. It was too soon for that. But determination. January started rough. My supervisor pulled me aside on the second day back and said, "Vernon, you're on thin ice. You've been late 12 times in the past 3 months. 3 more late arrivals, and I'm going to have to let you go." Ah, I nodded, told him I understood. But we both knew the truth. Without a car, I was at the mercy of the bus system. So I started leaving for work an hour earlier. I'd set my alarm for 4:30 a.m., dragged myself out of bed in the dark, and walked to the bus stop before the sun came up. I'd stand there in the cold waiting for a bus that sometimes came on time and sometimes didn't. On the days it came on time, I'd get to work early. On the days it didn't, I'd show up late, apologize, and watch my supervisor shake his head. I felt like I was drowning. February 9, 1 year since Lorraine died. I took the day off work and went to the cemetery. It's a small cemetery in Decatur. I brought flowers, cheap carnations from the grocery store, and I sat by her grave for hours. I told her everything. Told her about the car, about Simone, about how lost I felt. I cried. Asked her what I was supposed to do. She didn't answer, of course. But sitting there, I felt something shift. I realized I couldn't keep living like this. I had to take control. That night, I called Simone. It was the first time I'd called her since she took the car back. She answered on the fourth ring. "Hey, Daddy," I said. "I need the car back, Simone. I've been paying the note every month." "It's not right what you did," she sighed. "Daddy, we've been over this. Terrell needs it for work." I said, "What about me? What about my job?" She said, "Daddy, you have the bus." I said, "The bus isn't reliable." "I'm going to lose my job because of this." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I'm sorry, Daddy, but life's not fair. You taught me that." And then she hung up. I sat there holding the phone, feeling like I'd just been gut punched. That's when I knew I had to fight back. Over the next few weeks, I started doing research. I went to the library and used the computers to look up car ownership laws. I even scheduled a free consultation with a lawyer. I took a half day off work, rode the bus for an hour and a half, and sat in a tiny office while a young lawyer listened to my story. When I finished, he looked at me with pity and said, "Sir, I'm sorry, but because the car is titled in her name, there's not much you can do legally. You could sue her for the money you put into it, but that would be expensive, and there's no guarantee you'd win." I left that office feeling defeated. I left that office feeling defeated. I started looking into other options. Maybe I could get a loan, buy my own car. But when I checked my credit score, my heart sank. They was in the low 500s. All those medical bills from Lorraine's treatment had destroyed my credit. No bank would touch me. I was stuck. And the worst part? Simone knew it. March came in cold and unforgiving. I was still taking the bus every day, still showing up late, still watching my supervisor's patience wear thinner. On March 12th, my supervisor called me into his office. I knew what was coming. I'd been late 9 times in the past 2 months. I sat down across from him, and he looked tired. He said, "Vernon, I like you. You're a hard worker when you're here, but I can't keep making exceptions. The higher-ups are on me about it."
You've been late too many times. I'm sorry, but I have to let you go.
I didn't argue, didn't beg. I just nodded, stood up, shook his hand, and said, "I understand. Thank you for giving me as many chances as you did." I cleaned out my locker and left. I walked out of that warehouse and sat at the bus shelter for over an hour, just staring at nothing. Cars drove by, people walked past. Life kept moving, but I felt frozen. I felt like I'd just lost the last thing tying me to a normal life. No job meant no income. No income meant I couldn't pay rent. At 63 years old, I was about to become homeless. Bracer. And it was all because my daughter had taken my car. That night, I called Simone. I was desperate. I said, "Baby, I lost my job. I lost it because I couldn't get there on time without a car. I need the car back so I can find new work, so I can survive. Please." Bah. There was a pause. Then she said, her voice flat, "Daddy, I'm sorry you lost your job, but I can't help you right now. Terrell and I are dealing with our own stuff." I said, "Simone, I'm your father. I'm begging you." She said, "I have to go." And the line went dead. I stared at the phone in my hand, and then I threw it across the room as hard as I could. It shattered against the wall. I didn't care. I was done. I spent the next 2 weeks applying for jobs, but without a car, my options were limited. Most places wanted reliable transportation. The few that didn't were too far away. I went to interviews when I could, but I'd show up sweaty and exhausted, and I could see the interviewers writing me off before I even sat down. By the end of March, my savings account was almost empty. I had enough for maybe one more month of rent. April 13th came around. 1 full year since Simone gave me the car. I woke up that morning and the date hit me like a slap. 1 year since she'd pulled into my driveway with that Honda Accord. 1 year since I'd believed my daughter loved me enough to make a real sacrifice. I thought about calling her, reminding her of the anniversary. But what was the point? Instead, I went for a walk. Ended up at Grant Park. I sat on a bench and watched kids play, watched families have picnics, and I thought about my own childhood. Thought about my daddy, a man who worked 2 jobs his entire life, who never complained, who never made me feel like a burden. And I wondered where I went wrong, because somewhere along the way, I'd failed. The woman Simone had become wasn't the daughter I'd raised. That evening, my phone rang. Simone's number. My heart jumped. Maybe she was calling to apologize. I answered, "Hey, baby." She said, "Daddy, we need to talk." I said, "About what?" She said, "Terrell and I are getting serious. He's moving in with me next month, and we're thinking about getting engaged by the end of the year." I didn't say anything. She kept going, her voice bright. "I know things have been hard between us, but I want you to be happy for me. Terrell makes me happy, Daddy." I laughed, not a happy laugh. Bitter, broken laugh. I said, "You want me to be happy for you? Be? After everything you've done? After you took my car and left me stranded? After I lost my job because of you?" She got quiet. Then she said, "I did what I had to do, Daddy." I'm building a life, I said. And what about my future? Did you think about that when you took my car? She didn't answer. Finally, she said, I'm sorry you feel that way, and hung up. I sat there in the dark, phone in my hand, feeling like I'd just lost my daughter all over again. The girl I raised didn't exist anymore. She'd been replaced by this stranger who could ask me to be happy for her while I was literally losing everything because of her choices. That night, I made a decision. I decided I was done. Done hoping she'd change. Done letting her control my life. I didn't know what came next, but I knew it couldn't be this. Something had to give. And since she wasn't going to change, it had to be me.